For the News and Observer, I'm Dawn Vaughan, your host for this episode of Under the Dome for the week of Monday, May 8th, 2023. I'm here today with my politics team colleagues, Luciana, Perez, Uribe, Guinassi, and Avi Bajpai. If you're listening to this on Monday, well, you made it through crossover, and life goes on this week. Not a whole lot going on at the legislature, but we all need a slight pause after the complete chaos of crossover. So we'll lead off with what was obviously the biggest news, the abortion bill. It came and went within a matter of days, and as you listen to this now, unless something happened over the weekend, we're waiting on Democratic Governor Roy Cooper to veto it, which he already said he's going to do, and then whatever's going to happen in the aftermath. So myself, Luciana, Avi, we're all in the House and Senate chambers during a very long debate. You all are relatively new to the team. Do you remember a debate being this long over any other bills? Definitely not this session, I guess.
No way. Yeah. I mean, in the Senate, they were saying that it was the longest debate in modern history, in recent history. Every Democrat basically using up 10 minutes of their time to talk about the bill. But yeah, in the House as well. I mean, we were in there for several hours, Wednesday afternoon, Wednesday evening. I don't think we got to the abortion debate until about 9 p.m. So definitely interesting opening crossover experience for us.
I feel like the House is the ones that go very, very late. I said to Senator Berger, can you tell the House what to do? I was making a joke, but because the Senate, even with that really long abortion debate, it still ended at the end of the government business day anyway, not for reporters, but the end of the government worker business day at about 5 o'clock, I guess. Right?
Yeah, but they started like 10:30 a.m., so their debate was technically longer than the House's, which pushed it all the way late into the night, and I think the actual conversation on the abortion bill was maybe 2-3 hours.
I think even longer, because they took the break and then came back. Oh, compared to the House,
was like 2 hours. In the Senate, I think was like 5+ hours. So,
well, I thought it was the interesting thing about the debate is the House and the Senate have different rules, and Berger said that the Senate rules are every single senator gets to talk for 10 minutes, and some of them talked for probably up to 13 minutes, and there's a little bit of back and forth and debate over that, but every single Democratic senator talked. And then a few of the Republicans, the bill sponsors, and then a few others. But in the House, Moore said it was going to be unlimited debate. But I think within their rules, it's about 15 minutes maybe a person. But it didn't go as long as I thought. Because every single House Democrat could have, that would have been
We would have been there until middle of the night,
I think just starting late had a lot to do with that. So, there was 50 bills, I think, that were heard prior, so people were, at that point, probably a bit tired, and then, you hit the final big bill.
Yeah.
So.
It's crossover week, so the House Rules Committee was very busy on Tuesday and Wednesday, I believe, just churning through dozens upon dozens upon dozens of bills. So, 50-plus bills on the House calendar for Wednesday. I think that's probably one of the reasons why when you start the debate by 9, there's a sort of a sense of inevitability. The Republicans have the votes they need, so it's a question of when that bill gets to a vote and passes.
I thought it was a tactical move, too, of the Republicans because the protesters came once they knew, because, the bill was only revealed, to reporters, or according to lawmakers, what was in it, right, on late afternoon, Tuesday evening, right? Because we were waiting for the House to finish, and so the whole press corps and other visiting press are there waiting. The presser, I think, was supposed to be at 6, and then we're all just like tap, hurry up.
That started 45 minutes late. The bill didn't come out until just before 11 p.m. Tuesday night. Friday afternoon, it had passed both chambers, so that is very fast. Talk about fast tracking a bill.
Thursday afternoon, really, or end of day Thursday it passed.
Sorry.
I know all that. That's the thing about crossover is all the days run together. It's just one long 50,000 hour day.
Absolutely.
I think.
Just go to bed, wake up, you're in the same place again.
I honestly thought it was like the really late day, like the 11 o'clock day, maybe Wednesday. I thought,
Wednesday.
if I could just sleep here in the press room and then I wouldn't have to worry about going home and coming back. But that's also a crazy thought. Well, apparently we don't even have anything to complain about compared to what crossover used to be. Laura Leslie, who's the Capitol Bureau Chief for WRAL, our competitor and also friend, she said that past crossovers have gone like crazy late. I don't remember if it was crossover, but I feel like the last legislative session, I was in the chamber with now our DC correspondent, Danielle Battaglia, and it was past, it may have even been 3 a.m, but again, it's like time stops, and time can literally stop because that clock at the back of the House, Speaker Moore can stop when they have to do that parliamentary rule where you like have to start the next day or stop time or something like that. So he's got some cool gadgets up there in addition to the bell and the gavel.
Well, speaking of parliamentary tactics, over in the Senate, there were just so many Democrats who tried different mechanisms to slow down the bill, and all of them ultimately failed. But it was interesting to see, and that was my first time covering just a bill that had so many of those maneuvers. So.
Yes, the constitutional protest, and because we're all sitting, it's like everyone's just so tired, and the press corner in the House, and like all the visual journalists, and you're listening, but you're also just exhausted. And all of a sudden, the Democrats stood up, and we're like, wait, what? And because Democrats in the past have walked out of the chamber in protest, and we're like, wait, is this what's happening? And everybody get the video, but then it was that. A very governmental thing to do of I'm submitting this paperwork and we're all submitting it, and they lined up, which was still
the journal.
It was still a big deal considering everyone's just sitting in their chairs for most of the time. And then Democratic leader Robert Reeves and Representative Julie Von Hafen talked to reporters at the back of the chamber after. And I feel like by the time we talked to Speaker Moore, it was probably, I feel like 11 o'clock by then.
Yeah,
10
pretty close to 11 o'clock. I mean, I think the speed with which the bill moved through the General Assembly, that was really like the main sort of, the main theme of this week for both sides. I mean, there were a lot of people, obviously that was like the number one protest by Democrats, just complaining that, this process wasn't transparent enough. The bill comes out Tuesday night, just before 11, it's in a joint rules committee at 9 a.m., and then it's on the House floor a few hours later. So, there were some lawmakers who were saying that they barely, really didn't even have time by the time that the Rules Committee met. They hadn't even really gone through the bill itself, 46 pages. So, I think that was definitely one of the main sort of components of this whole process was this argument. The Republicans basically said, we spent several months conferring over this, debating over this, talking about it privately in our own ranks in both of our caucuses. They obviously have control of the GA, so I mean, everyone kind of knows that that's how it's gonna work. That's how it's gonna play out. But that doesn't really stop critics of this process, Democrats, but also just people, good government types, and people who have concerns about transparency in this process, from saying, this is probably the most significant bill to come out this session, or one of the most.
Well, the budget.
Yeah.
I just got to plug the budget.
Yeah.
But I mean, they followed the technical process that they can, right? So it went through rules before, but I feel like this is a recurring theme of time to read the bill. And, reporters gripe about when they have the budget and they run the budget through multiple committees, not just rules, very, very quickly. Yeah. But it does take time to read things, and that was what when you put it out at 11 o'clock at night, and then you have the committee in the morning, you do need that time to read something. If it was even just a day longer and run through another committee, then you actually have the time to read through it. I think what people's reaction to it wouldn't have been any different.
Yeah.
They're not going to like it today, they're not going to like it yesterday or tomorrow, right? But they would actually have time to point out those tiny little things in there, which was raised in the House and Senate debate, and I think probably more in the Senate, especially Democratic Whip Jay Choudhury bringing it up about these very specific line items that when you're making a law, you need to get right? Yeah. Otherwise, you have to go back and pass another law.
Yeah.
So. But even beyond abortion, just like the past 2 weeks, there have been so many bills rolling through that typically before a committee, I try to read them, skim them, and it would be so many that I would just potentially not get the chance to see them all. And I've heard that that's kind of been even faster this session than potentially other times.
It's actually a little bit better. And I'll explain once we come back from break. You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm Dawn, here with Avi and Luciana. We'll be right back with more about abortion, crossover, and our picks for Headliner of the Week. You're listening to Under the Dome. I'm News and Observer State Capitol Bureau Chief Dawn Vaughan, here with my politics team colleagues Luciana, Perez, Uribe, Guinassi, and Avi Bajpai. Before the break, we were talking about the speedy process and that lack of transparency. And believe it or not, it's a little more transparent than it used to be. I've been covering this for four some years. And one thing that came out of COVID was digital documents. And before in committee, when we're talking about the timing of reading a bill, but even if you have this whole committee process, sometimes you can be sitting in committee and then the PCS shows up, which is proposed committee substitute. And it wasn't on anything online. It was on a printed paper copy that the sergeants at arms had or the lawmakers had. And so the reporters in the room are like, wait, what are you talking about? And they're like, well, I have a PCS for this. And there was no online dashboard for rules. You just had to wait until usually after the committee and go ask someone for it or pick it up off the floor or whatever. And so being literally, I like, of course, the Hamilton phrase, in the room where it happens. If you're not in the room where it happens, you didn't get it. Now, eventually it would be updated on the bill page online later, but by that you could have written a bunch of stories, you could have interviewed people. And so that's one thing that happened during, even though the legislature was in person most of the pandemic, at some point, because some people were using WebEx or some of the committees were, they started having it available digitally sooner. And so that's actually better, even though it's still not great.
Even the streaming, like I know when there's lots of committees going on, sometimes you have to catch like a little portion online, which helps a lot. So
there was no house streaming. So that's a new thing. So I think this session, people are paying a lot more attention. And because they're just watching it on their computers, it's not that many. If you look at the stream on YouTube, it's like maybe a couple hundred, even for like the really big debates and everything. But it wasn't on camera at all. You could hear the audio. And in the Senate, it's still only audio. But it's been interesting as a reporter to see that lawmakers know that they're on video, and the way that the cadence in their voice changes a little bit. Like in the past, if you knew someone was wanted to record their debate so they can put it out with their campaign emails, listeners probably know some of the former lawmakers that might be in Congress now that have done this. But there's another staff member, and we still see it, comes up on the floor, and then suddenly the way they talk is different because they're using it for something else versus if they were actually just talking to the other lawmakers. But I mean, that's politics.
We saw that yesterday during the Senate debate too. Thursday Senate debate, because they're obviously addressing their colleagues. They're debating on the Senate floor, but they're talking to their constituents. They're talking to the community out there that they represent. So definitely recent phenomenon.
Recent development.
So there are a whole lot of other bills we haven't talked about yet. Quickly, what else do we need to let people know going into this week? So there are no House votes this week. The Senate, as of Thursday afternoon, was maybe going to do something this week as you're listening, maybe not until Thursday. But the Senate is really busy with the next big thing, which is the budget, my favorite topic, and maybe 5 other people. And the Senate budget will come out this following week of the May 15th week. So the Senate budget writers, and they'll be busy this week. But it looks like the House is going to be chilling out. And sometimes that's used, I feel like, when I've seen what I've seen them do the past couple of years, as sort of a cooling off period after there's been a lot of contentious debate, which obviously abortion was.
Yeah, they had a committee scheduled yesterday, right after session, on the Blue Cross bill, which has been a bit contentious in that it'll change the structure of Blue Cross Blue Shield insurance providers. So I'm curious about when that will pop up again, but we'll see.
We saw Insurance Commissioner Mike Causey in the cafeteria waiting for that committee that never happened.
Yeah.
I didn't see if he got the lemon chicken soup, but
We all did.
Yeah.
Well, I did. Did you, Avi?
I no, I wasn't there for that. No. Yeah.
well, next time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what Speaker Moore was saying, that they're basically waiting for the Senate to wrap up their budget process, committee process next week. So that's why they're going to take things pretty slow next week. No votes next week. Talking about crossover and bills that didn't make it through, one of the big ones that I was tracking that was going to be another sort of contentious debate that we were expecting on the House floor was House Bill 189. That was the bill, concealed carry bill, that would have basically been the next step in the effort by lots of different gun rights groups to sort of loosen some of the restrictions, make it easier for gun owners. That would have basically said, right now, if you want to carry a concealed weapon, a concealed handgun, you have to get a permit from your sheriff's office. People listening to the podcast might remember just over a month ago, we had a very similar contentious debate about repealing or changing, another permit process for just buying handguns. So this bill, was introduced several months ago, didn't go anywhere for a long time, and then suddenly, recently was calendared for a couple of House committees this past week. Quickly made it through those committees, was scheduled to be on the floor. And then while we were waiting for the House to get through their 50 or so bills on Wednesday and get to the abortion bill, they took a break for dinner. And right before they did that, Speaker Moore took it off the calendar. Because of the crossover deadline, that basically meant, it would not make it through the House before that pretty critical deadline.
And that was about the same time that, or a little bit earlier, waiting for the House to get their business together, reporters are like, well, let's see what's going on in the Senate. And it was during a gaggle where Berger said that it was like basically they've essentially done enough for gun legislation this session for now, right? So it could be just that Berger was like, we don't need to add that to this week, especially because abortion sucked all the air out of the room.
Yeah.
Again, crossover is a made up deadline. And yes, there's technical reasons why other bills can move ahead later, but there's also the fact that the people in power can just, shove it in a replacement bill later. So it's crossover, but not really. And again, the people that make the rules get to change the rules.
Yeah.
So
If there's a will, there's a way.
all right, so let's go on with our picks for headliner of the week, which are obviously the biggest headliner we've already talked about. So these are a little bit different. Avi, let's start with you. Who or what is your headliner of the week?
Yeah, so I'm going to take a cue from Representative Allison Dahl. She was speaking on the House floor on Thursday after the marathon session the night before. And she said, she basically gave a shout out to the sergeants at arms, which was basically seconded or echoed by everyone else. Speaker Moore also said, absolutely, we should recognize, just how important, vital of a sort of role they play. She was basically talking about how it's really nice to see when you're going through a really busy, chaotic week or other things are going on, and then you sort of get over to the House or the Senate, and the sergeants at arms are always there, basically, with a smile on their face and helping you out. So, I had the same experience. It's always really great to run into them, talk to them, and definitely a highlight of a very busy week.
There are also some of the lowest paid people in the building. The cafeteria staff, the custodians, and the sergeant at arms are the lowest paid legislative building workers, and a lot of other people in the building that, well, I guess sergeant at arms wear suits, but a lot of the people who have to wear suits all the time make considerably more amount of money for, they're there as long as the rest of them. So I'll echo your shout out. And Luciana, you said something sad happened this week that you heard in committee.
Yeah, so I heard in committee that one of the sergeants at arms had passed away. I unfortunately I don't recall the name exactly, and don't know if I would know exactly who that was, but it was just sad to hear that, because all of the ones I've crossed paths with have always offered a friendly smile, at this point, I think they recognize everyone in press and just are very helpful in finding seats and, letting you know where you can go and all that. So I think it's just really sad, and we, just had a moment in recognition of his work, and from what I heard, he passed away due to cancer. So.
Luciana, we'll circle back to you for the final headliner, but since we're talking about appreciating people's work, I'm going to, this week, as you're listening, May 8th is Teacher and Staff Appreciation Week in a lot of schools. And I wanted to give a shout out to all of the people who work in education. It's been a long few years for them. Not like we were talking about the sergeant at arms versus the other people. It's more than just teachers that work in a school. It's the cafeteria workers, it's the custodians, the bus drivers, the principals, the admin, all the other jobs there. And I just wanted to thank them for all that they do in making a place for students across North Carolina and everywhere else to go five days a week.
Yeah.
So that's my headliner. Luciana, let's end on a more festive note. What's your headliner?
Well, as we dive into the weekend, it is Cinco de Mayo today, so it basically celebrates, I think, a victory over the French in a war in the 18,000s. And, but yeah, I know there's a tremendous amount of Mexican culture, so I don't want to oversimplify, but I will be having a margarita and, celebrating today in some sort of way.
We could all use a margarita after this week.
Yeah, I hope I hope everyone had their margaritas and rest and everything else over the weekend as we start another week in North Carolina politics, which is always full of unexpected everything. So, and session's not even done yet. We still got at least 2 months to go.
Yeah.
So. Yeah. All right, I'm Dawn Vaughan for Avi and Luciana, the News and Observer. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk to you next time.